Iléyá iléyá o ọmọ Oòduà iléyá 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 o ọmọ Oòduà iléyá bí ọba mọ bí à ń rè ìbọn yẹ ká padà sílé kájáwó lápọn tí kò yọ kájọ gbòmí lákàná iléyá iléyá o ọmọ Oòduà iléyá ìṣẹ̀yá ìṣẹ̀yá o ọmọ Oòduà ìṣẹ̀yá bí ọba mọ bí à ń rè ìbẹ́ yẹ ká padà sílé kájáwọ́ lápọ̀n sí kò yọ kájọ gbómi lákàná ìṣẹ̀yá ìṣẹ̀yá o ọmọ Oòduà ìṣẹ̀yá. Gbogbo àwọn ọmọ Oòduà nílé lóko àtìlẹ́yìn odi níbikíbi tí a bá wà, iṣẹ́ ti yá o, iṣẹ́ ti yá o. Ẹ jẹ́ ká dìde kájà fẹ́tọ̀ọ́ wa, ẹ jẹ́ ká dìde kájà fómìnira tiwa gangan. Population tá a ní odò dádúró, population wa tó dádúró more than 60 million population la ní. Àti ìka àwọn tó wà ní Brazil mọ́ o, àti ìka àwọn tó wà Cuba mọ́ o, àti ìka àwọn tó wà Mexico mọ́ o, àti ìka àwọn tó wà ní England mọ́ o, àwọn tó wà ní Amẹ́ríkà àwọn yẹn àti ìka àwọn mọ́ wa o. Odò àwọn táwa lórí location náà nìkan we are more than 60 million population. Ṣé àjò dádúró ni? Kí ló wá ń bọ̀ wá lẹ́rù? Gbogbo àwọn ọmọ kóòtù òjíire, gbogbo àwọn ọmọ Odùduwà, ẹ jẹ́ ká dìde. Àsìkò ti tó, àsìkò ti tó, ẹ jẹ́ ká dìde. Wá Nàìjíríà kò lè mú nǹkan gidi wá fún wa. Oko ìparun ni wá Nàìjíríà kó wá lọ. Ẹ jẹ́ ká bèèrè wa léèrè láti nẹ́rìtì láti gbòmìnira. Àǹfààní wo gan ni àwọn ọmọ Odùduwà jẹ nínú wá Nàìjíríà? Gbogbo àǹfààní tá a jẹ nínú ìjọba bàbá wa Ọbáfẹ́mi Awólọ́wọ̀ kọ́lẹ́dùnmọ̀ ẹ̀kọ́ bá fọ̀hún kẹ́ wọn. Ìjẹ́ apadà rí jẹ́ ní wá Nàìjíríà nígbà tí wọ́n sọ papọ̀ bí? Nígbà tí wọ́n sọ papọ̀ tí apadà rí jẹ́ gbogbo àwọn tí wọ́n ń jẹ lórílẹ̀ alórí lọ́jọ́ tòní. Ilé ẹ̀kọ́ ọ̀fẹ́ bàbá Awólọ́wọ̀ ni wọ́n gbé wọn lọ. Ilé ẹ̀kọ́ ọ̀fẹ́ bàbá Awólọ́wọ̀ òun ni gbogbo wọn lọ káríkárí. Ẹ wá bí wọ́n léèrè, ìjẹ́ ìgbésẹ̀ tí bàbá Awólọ́wọ̀ gbé sóhun ni wọ́n ń gbé? Kàkà kí wọ́n tún nǹkan tí bàbá Awólọ́wọ̀ ṣe tí wọ́n tún ṣe, wọ́n ba ogun ẹ̀jẹ̀ mọ́ wa lọ́wọ́ ni. Ẹ wá ní ká sì dò nínú ìlú yẹn. Ṣé wọ́n Nàìjíríà ṣé ìlú tẹ́lẹ̀ lè fọkànbalẹ̀ sí ni? Ìlú tẹ́lẹ̀ pé wọ́n ò bọ̀wọ̀ fún ìjọba ènìyàn, ìjọba ènìyàn tó wọ́n lójú màálù wọ́n fàlù ẹ̀ jù wá lọ. Ẹ̀yin tẹ́ wọ́n mi nílé tẹ́ ń gbọ́ mi, ẹ bá mi pín fídíò yìí kọ́ lọ dáadáa. Mo bẹ̀ yín ni mo rọ̀ yín ni. Mo ní fídíò ẹnìkan tí mo fẹ́ play. Mo fẹ́ kẹ́ fìdí nílé kankan tó fi dára gbọ́, torí ẹni tí mo fẹ́ play fídíò ẹ̀ yìí ó ń ṣiṣẹ́ takuntakun láti ìgbà tó ti lé àwọn ọ̀jẹ̀lú tó ti lé wọn kó lórí àléfà tó ní gbàdébá lọ́wọ́ wọn. Àdìbá ni ti múnú àwọn ọmọ ìlú ẹ̀ dùn ló ń ṣiṣẹ́ ribiribi sí ìlú ẹ̀. Wọ́n fẹ́ ká fìdí lé nǹkan gbogbo ẹ̀ tẹ̀ wọ́n mi tẹ̀ ń gbọ́ mi. Ẹ jẹ́ ká fìdí lé kájọ gbọ́ ọ̀rọ̀ tó sọ, ọ̀rọ̀ tó lè ta àwa gan jí ni, ọ̀rọ̀ tó lè wúlò fún àwa náà ni. Káàfì mọ̀ pé dandan agbọ́dọ̀ bá wa lè lóko ẹrú Nàìjíríà, dandan àwọn náà gbọ́dọ̀ dádúró láti rí pé ìyà ò jẹ àwọn ìran wa mọ́. Gbogbo ọmọ kóòtù òjíire, ẹ bá ń pín ètò yìí, ẹ bá mi pín kọ́ lọ dáadáa. Gbogbo ẹ lólùfẹ́ Ibrahim TV show, ẹ bá mi pín ètò kọ́ lọ dáadáa. Ẹ sì mọ́ gbàgbé láti bá mi subscribe torí YouTube channel mi, torí ẹni tàbí tó bá ti jọ fídíò kékeré jẹ́ ní àkọ́kọ́ tẹ́ ẹ̀kọ́ rí fídíò mi, òun ni mo fi bẹ̀yìn, mo fi wọ̀nyí pé ẹ bá mi subscribe torí YouTube channel mi. Gbogbo ẹni tẹ́ ẹ̀ wò mí tẹ́ ẹ̀ ń gbọ́ mi. Ṣé ẹ ti gbọ́ fídíò tó fẹ́ play fún wa? Mo fẹ́ kẹ́ ẹ máa wo fídíò náà lọ báwọn. Ṣé ẹ máa wo fídíò náà lọ? Mo rí pé ẹ̀kọ́ wà ń bẹ̀tọ̀ pọ̀ táàjọ kọ́, àmọ́ nǹkan tẹ́lẹ̀ bá rí lórí ẹ̀ tó jẹ́ bí ẹ̀kọ́ mo fẹ́ kẹ́ máa kọ sábẹ́ comment tí gbogbo ayé ó rí, torí ẹni tí fẹ́ play fídíò fún wa yìí gbogbo àti mọ̀ pé ní gbogbo Áfíríkà ló ní ìsìn òun ni ẹni àkọ́kọ́ tí gbogbo èèyàn sọ̀rọ̀ ẹ̀ lórí iṣẹ́ takuntakun tó ṣe fáwọn ọmọ ìlú ẹ̀. Kò tí ìpọ́dún méjì o, kò tí ìpọ́dún tó ti láwọn ọ̀jẹ̀lú yìí lọ o. Àwọn ọ̀jẹ̀lú lẹ́ pé wọ́n pe àwọn olóṣèlú lẹ́ pé ọ̀jẹ̀lú ni wọ́n. Ìpọ́dún méjì tó ti lé wọn lọ o. Nígbà tó lé wọn lọ gbàjọba, ẹ wo nǹkan ribiribi tó ṣe fáwọn ọmọ ìlú ẹ̀. Irú nǹkan táwọn náà ń wá lórí ilẹ̀ wa nìyẹn. Àwọn náà a fẹ́ irú ìgbádùn bẹ́ẹ̀ lórí ilẹ̀ Yorùbá. Àmọ́ tí a bá sì wà ní Nàìjíríà, àlè ìgbádùn bẹ́ẹ̀ o mẹ́rin ká tanra wa o àlè ìgbádùn bẹ́ẹ̀ láìláì torí ìjọba nàìjíríà wọn ò ṣe fún gbogbo àwa tá a wà ní nàìjíríà láì jẹ́ ká gbádùn àwọn kan ni wọ́n dá nàìjíríà lẹ́fun àwọn mẹ̀kúnnù sì ń láàrin wọn òun làbí pa ọkọ èèyàn wáyé pé ẹ jẹ́ ká dìde ilé ti yá o ilé ti yá ilé ti yá ilé yá o ọmọ Oòduà ilé yá báwo bá mọ bí à ń rè é dèbọ yẹ ká padà sílé ká jáwọ́ lápọ̀n tí kò yọ kájọ gbòmí lákàná ilé yá o ọmọ Oòduà ilé yá iṣẹ́ ti yá o ẹ dìde o bàbá wa Pòfẹ́sọ̀ Bánjí Akíntóyè wọ́n ti kéde mega rally gbogbo àdìbìtì àwọn àgbọ̀ ẹ mọ̀ ẹ̀ka dìbò sílẹ̀ báyìí lọ́wọ́ tá a wà iṣẹ́ ti yá o oníkálùkù ká bọ́ ta lógúnlógún ká bọ́ ta lọ́gbọ̀nlọ́gbọ̀n ká jẹ́ kí ìjọba nàìjíríà mọ̀ ìpèsè nàìjíríà ti sú wa a ṣe wá nàìjíríà mọ́ torí wípé self determination ẹ̀tọ́ wa ni kò lè sófin it's not a crime ẹ̀yin yẹn wa ní bẹ̀rù ẹ jáde ẹ wu aṣọ fún àbí aṣọ Yorùbá nation kẹ ẹ jáde peaceful mega rally là ń ṣe àbájọbajà o àbájọbajà pàápàá peaceful mega rally òun là ń ṣe ṣẹ́ẹ́dígbọ́ ẹ̀ṣẹ̀ gan ni ẹ̀ṣẹ̀ nǹkan national anthem kí n tó play fídíò tó fẹ́ play kí n tó play fún wa. Iṣẹ́ wa fúnlẹ̀ wá forílẹ̀ ibi wá kàgbéga fàyè rí ìgbàgbọ́ wa ni pé bá ṣe bẹ̀rù làbọ̀ mọ́ ká ṣiṣẹ́ ká jọlá ìṣọ̀kan àtòmìnira ní ẹ jẹ́ ká máa lépa tẹ̀síwájú fọ̀pọ̀ ire àtòhun tó dára ọmọ Oòduà dìde bọ́ sípò ẹ̀tọ́ rẹ ìwọ ni ìmọ́lẹ̀ ògo adúláwọ̀ àwa ni ìmọ́lẹ̀ ògo adúláwọ̀ orílẹ̀-èdè Yorùbá ní kíákíá ẹ jẹ́ ká lè wo fídíò yẹn.
Brothers and sisters of Africa, children of the Sahel, and all those watching across the globe, I greet you with the strength of our ancestors and the resolve of our forefathers. Today, I speak not just as the leader of Burkina Faso, but as a humble son of Africa, witness to her pain, her struggle, and now her awakening. For far too long, the nations of the Sahel, Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger have walked paths that were designed for us by others, paths that led us deeper into debt, into dependence, into division. And each time we tried to rise, our wings were clipped not by our own people, but by the very institutions that claim to protect freedom and peace. Ask yourselves why, despite decades of foreign aid, military bases, and international summits, do our people still suffer? Why do our children remain hungry while our lands are rich? Why do bullets still fly in our skies while we export gold, uranium, and oil? These are not accidents, these are consequences of a system that was never designed for our liberation. And so I say this enough. We did not come into this world to be ruled. We were not born to be managed. We are not colonies anymore. We are sovereign people, and sovereignty is not a slogan, it is a responsibility. That is why wave nations of Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger have come together under a new banner. The Alliance of Sahel States. This alliance was not created in boardrooms. It was not signed off by foreign powers. No, it was born out of the trenches of resistance shaped by the cries of our mothers. And forged in the fire of our shared struggle, we realized that when one of us bleeds, we all bleed. When a bomb explodes in Gao, the tremor is felt in Ouagadougou. When terrorists attack farmers in Tilabri, we all lose our food, our brothers, our dignity. We are bound not just by geography, but by destiny. So what is the Alliance of Sahel States? It is a commitment, a pact between free nations to defend one another, to support one another, and to build a future that belongs to us. Not to Paris, not to Washington, not to the IMF, but to the children of Africa. Through this alliance, we are laying down the foundations of Pan-African self-defense, of economic independence, and of a cultural revival that puts our people and foreign interests at the center. We are coordinating our military forces. We are strengthening our borders. We are cleaning out the corruption and the puppets that opened the gates to occupation in the first place. But this is not just about fighting enemies. It is about building something new, a new Sahel, a new Africa, an Africa where our languages are taught before foreign tongues, where our resources are used to power our schools and hospitals, not skyscrapers in Europe, where dignity is not a privilege for the elite, but a right for every farmer, teacher, and soldier. To those who say, we are turning our backs on the world, I say no, we are turning our backs on hypocrisy, on exploitation dressed as friendship. We are not against the world. We are for our people. And we welcome any nation that respects us as equals, but we will no longer beg, we will no longer kneel. We have stood up and we are staying up. I speak today not to provoke, but to proclaim Africa is rising and the Sahel is leading. To my brothers in Mali and Nicaragua, courage gives us strength. To the young people of the Sahel, you are the fire that no empire can extinguish. To the elders who carried us through storms, your wisdom will guide this revolution. Let this be clear. The alliance of Sahel states is not a temporary reaction. It is the first brick in the house of our future, a future where we define our own security, where we manage our own economy, and where no child has to die for the profit of another nation. This is just the beginning. May the world listen closely. Africa is no longer sleeping. My people was. Let us speak plainly. Our greatest struggle today is not just against terrorism, nor is it merely about changing governments or holding elections. It is about something far deeper, something that touches every corner of our lives. It is the battle against dependency. Africa is rich. We are rich in gold. We are rich in oil. We are rich in uranium, lithium, manganese, cocoa, timber, and mines that can build the future. Yet how can a rich man go to bed hungry? The answer is simple. The rich man does not control his wealth. For decades, we have lived under a system where our resources are extracted, refined elsewhere, and then sold back to us. Where our policies are dictated by international institutions, where loans are offered with smiles but tied to chains, where foreign armies claim to protect us, yet our people remain unsafe. And our sovereignty is only written on paper. This is what I call economic occupation, a form of control more dangerous than colonial guns. You see, my brothers and sisters, a nation that cannot feed itself, cannot defend itself, a nation that depends on others for medicine, food, fuel, and even information is a nation always at risk of blackmail. They say, here, take our aid. And we are made to smile and say, thank you, even when that aid builds their influence and robs us of our independence. Let me be clear, the alliance of Sahel states is not anti-West, it is pro-African. It is not about closing our doors. It is about standing on our own feet so that when we open our doors, we are not crawling, we're standing tall. We are not asking for permission to exist. We are reclaiming the right to decide for ourselves. And this decision begins with our economy. We must develop industries in Africa. We must refine our own minerals. We must create value in our countries before sending anything abroad. And if the international community truly believes in partnership, then let them invest in our ability to stand, not in their ability to dominate. The youth of Africa are watching, and they are no longer fooled by speeches full of promises and policies written in other languages. They want action, they want dignity. They want opportunities that don't involve drowning in the Mediterranean, trying to escape a continent that should be the richest on earth. And let us not forget, our dependency did not come by accident. It was engineered. It was written into the trade agreements. It was embedded in the so-called development loans. It was enforced through coups, puppet leaders, and media campaigns designed to make us believe that without help from others, we cannot survive. But we are not children. We are descendants of kingdoms, of Mali, of Songhai, of Masi warriors. We built cities when some parts of the world were still in darkness. We are not starting from zero. We are returning to greatness. This is why we are rejecting the mechanisms of control through debt control, through language. control through so-called security partnerships that destabilize more than they protect. We are beginning to build internal resilience. Joint economic initiatives between our three nations. Agreements to exchange resources without needing foreign currencies. Training centers where African youth will learn to build, manufacture, and innovate right here on African soil. The dream is no longer distant. It is becoming real. And we invite our brothers and sisters across the continent to watch and join, not with empty speeches, but with bold action. Let me repeat this for the world to hear. The Sahel will not be the back door of foreign influence anymore. We will be the shield and the spear. We will be the architects of a new economic model based on cooperation, mutual respect, and African pride. Let those who have ears hear. Let those who once exploited us understand. The age of quiet submission is over. We are not rebelling, we are restoring what was stolen, restoring what was lost, and most importantly, restoring belief in ourselves. May the voice of the Sahel rise like thunder and echo across every corner of this continent. This is not the end of dependency, it is the beginning of freedom. To my brothers and sisters across Africa, to the leaders of proud nations, to the youth rising in courage and the elders standing in wisdom. The time has come to end the division that has crippled us for too long. We were not born divided. We were divided by lines drawn in Berlin, not in Bamako, Lagos, or Accra. Lines that separated languages, tribes, rivers, and even families. Lines that turned neighbors into strangers and strangers into enemies. And those who drew these lines, they knew what they were doing, because a divided Africa is a weak Africa. Today, when we try to trade among ourselves, we face barriers that don't exist when we trade with Europe. When we try to travel between African nations, we need more documents than we do to fly overseas. When we need help, we go to the West before we go to each other. But this must stop. This will stop. We must recognize a simple truth. Our future lies in unity. The alliance of Sahel states is only the beginning. It is not a closed circle, it is an open call. A call to Nigeria, to Ghana, to Senegal, to Chad, to every African nation that still believes in the dream of our forefathers, Nkrumah, Sankara, Lumumba, Nikure, and others. We must build one Africa, an Africa where the borders do not divide our hearts. An Africa where we solve our problems among ourselves, not in foreign capitals. An Africa where our resources serve our people first, not the companies that exploit us. My brothers, the West knows the power of unity. That is why they built the European Union. But when Africans speak of unity, they call us radical. When we speak of self-reliance, they say we are turning our backs on the world. When we stand tall, they say we are rebelling. But I ask you, is it rebellion to want freedom? Is it rebellion to want dignity? Is it rebellion to say that Africa belongs to Africans first? Let me tell you what rebellion is. Rebellion is what they did when they enslaved us. Rebellion is what they did when they stole our lands. Rebellion is what they do when they fund wars and fuel divisions, then sell us peace. But no more. Unity will be our shield. Unity will be our strength. Unity will be our strategy. And this unity must start with trust. Let us trust each other more than we trust those who once enslaved us. And let us speak to each other before we run to foreign powers. Let us build roads, railways, and digital networks that connect Africans to Africans. Let us circulate our own currency. Let us build an African monetary fund. Let us stop begging for loans that come with chains. To the leaders of Africa, I say this with respect. It is time to choose. You can no longer sit on the fence. You either stand with the liberation of Africa or you continue to dance for those who do not wish us well. The youth are awake. They are watching home. They are tired of the lies, the corruption, the manipulation. They want truth, they want justice. They want leaders who fight for Africa, not those who sell it in secret meetings. We must end the era where African leaders wait for foreign approval before acting, where African policies are written in Paris, Brussels, or Washington, where African armies are trained not to defend Africa but to protect foreign interests. This is the hour of Pan-African renewal. We are not building a continent of slogans. We are building a continent of action, where words are backed by courage, where plans are backed by sweat, and where leadership is not about luxury but about service. I speak as a soldier, I speak as a son of Africa, and I speak on behalf of every child who dreams of a future where they can thrive without leaving this land. Stronger regional industries with reduced dependency on imports. But we must be honest. To achieve this, we must first rebuild trust between African governments. No more playing double games with foreign powers. No more undercutting each other for short-term gains. The West is united in its economic front. Asia has built strong trade alliances. Why must Africa remain fragmented? It is time we create a continental monetary union rooted in transparency, cooperation, and accountability. Let me ask you, can you truly say you are sovereign when your currency is printed in a foreign capital? When your reserves are held by those who once colonized you? When your budget is dictated by international financial institutions with no stake in your people's future? No, my friends, that is not independence, that is illusion. And that illusion must end now. I call upon the African Union, the African Central Bank, the African Development Bank, and every economic body on this continent. Start laying the foundations of a unified African currency. We can begin with regional currencies, perhaps with an ECOAAs or SADC, and scale up as trust and infrastructure grow. Let our scholars, our economists, and our visionaries work hand in hand. Let our central banks meet not to compete, but to co-create. This will not be easy. There will be resistance. There will be pressure from within and without. But I ask, if not now, when? If not us, who? When? The youth of Africa are ready. They trade across borders on their phones. They dream beyond artificial lines drawn by colonial maps. They are building a digital economy. We must match their energy with bold monetary leadership. Let us also explore digital currencies, African-controlled, secure, and inclusive. Let us bring fintech innovation into our villages and empower farmers, artisans, and students with tools for economic freedom. No longer should money flow out of Africa faster than it comes in. No longer should our treasuries be drained to service debt traps engineered by global lenders. And let the world understand, Africa does not want charity. Africa wants fair trade. Africa does not want pity. Africa wants respect. And respect begins with economic self-determination. To my fellow African leaders, history will remember us either as those who rose to the challenge or those who folded under fear. Choose courage. To the people of Burkina Faso and every African watching, I pledge this. We will not rest until we break every chain, seen and unseen. We will fight not only for our soil, but for our currency, our markets, and our economic future. This is not just a political revolution. It is an economic awakening, and it has already begun. Let the sound of printing presses in Africa become the sound of freedom. Let the future note bear the image of an African eagle, not foreign empires. Let our money finally reflect our dignity. The time has come to own our currency and with it our destiny. My African brothers and sisters, there is a war that is not fought with guns, not with bombs, but with words, with images, with narratives. A silent war, yet more dangerous than many realize. It is the war for Africa's image, a war that has long been waged and lost, not on the battlefield, but in newsrooms, in social media feeds, and in classrooms around the world. For generations, Africa has been portrayed as a continent of despair, a place of endless crisis, hunger, disease, and war. And every time we try to rise, the camera turns only when we fall. But I ask you, who controls that camera? Who chooses the angle? Who writes the headlines? Who decides what stories the world should hear? It is not us soccer. It is those who benefit when Africa is seen as weak, as chaotic, as forever dependent. This war is not accidental, it is strategic. Because if they can control the world's perception of Africa, they can justify controlling Africa's resources, its policies, even its leaders. If they can make the world believe that Africa cannot govern itself, then they can install puppets, fund chaos, and destabilize us all in the name of help. Let me be clear, the narrative is power, and those who control the story control the destiny. When you are told from childhood that your continent is poor, that your people are backward, that your culture is inferior, you begin to believe it. You begin to doubt your own worth. And that, my friends, is the first step in psychological colonization. Africa is not just in a struggle for land or gold or oil. Africa is in a struggle for the truth. So today I call on a new generation of African storytellers, journalists, filmmakers, poets, bloggers, and digital warriors. Take back the pen, take back the lens, tell our stories our way. We must stop allowing others to define who we are. No more saving African narratives by those who once enslaved and exploited her. No more documentaries that film only our slums while ignoring our innovation. No more history books that begin Africa's story with colonization as if we had no civilization before the invader came. Before they arrived, we built pyramids, we conducted complex trade, we created philosophy, music, astronomy, all on African soil. Where is that story? Why is it not taught in their schools? Why is it not shown in their films? Because it does not serve their agenda. And so we must build our own media top. African-owned, African-run, and African-focused. We must fund Pan-African news agencies, satellite networks, and digital platforms. We must teach our children the true history of Africa, the empires of Mali, the scholars of Timbuktu, the architects of Nubia. We must remind the world that Africa was not discovered. Africa was always here watching, remembering, surviving, and now rising. I speak today not just to presidents and ministers, but to influencers, creators, students, and teachers. Do not repost propaganda. Do not amplify shame. Instead, amplify African brilliance, resilience, and sovereignty. Tell the story of the young innovator in Lagos creating AI solutions. Tell the story of the farmer in Mali feeding a village using indigenous methods. Tell the story of the Burkinab woman leading her community through courage and tradition. Let us flood the world with images of dignity. Let us speak of our wounds not for pity but for healing. Let us show our triumphs not for applause but for legacy. You see, narrative is not only about external perception, it's about internal belief. When a child sees themselves in a hero, they rise. When a nation sees itself as capable, it acts with courage. And when a continent claims its story, it shapes its future. That is the revolution we now need, a revolution of truth. Let this be the era where our children grow up knowing their heroes, speaking their languages, and believing in their continent. If they try to silence us, we will speak louder. If they try to erase us, we will write deeper. If they try to distort us, we will shine with truth. Because Africa is not a victim, Africa is a vision, and the world must hear it from our mouths. This is why I speak, this is why I will never stop. We will not allow our future to be written by those who profited from our past. We will write it ourselves, boldly, clearly, and proudly. Africa, it is time we own our story. And with that, we step into power. My beloved people of Africa, today I want to speak about a wound so deep and persistent that it has shaped our economies, our decisions, and even our self-worth, economic dependency. From the moment we were politically independent, we were economically bound to outdated trade agreements, bound to unfair loan terms, bound to currencies that are not ours, bound to organizations that speak of development, yet write policies that ensure we never catch up. How can a man be free if he must ask permission to use the resources beneath his own soil? How can a nation stand tall when its wealth flows outward while its people go hungry? This is not just injustice, this is design. And unless we break this chain, Africa will always remain the richest poor continent. So I speak now, not just as a president, but as a son of the soil. Economic sovereignty is the next frontier of our freedom. We must stop begging for what is already ours. We must stop accepting the crumbs of the global economy when the feast was prepared with our ingredients. For far too long, Africa has exported raw materials and imported poverty. Gold leaves our ground and debt enters our accounts. Oil flows from our wells, but our people cook with firewood. Cocoa crosses our borders, but our children have never tasted real chocolate. Why? Because we were trained to extract, not to transform. To sell, not to own. But today I say this must end. The new Africa must refine its own oil, process its own minerals, and feed its own people. We must build the factories, trained engineers, invest in agriculture, and empower our youth to become creators, not just consumers. We must stop seeing foreign aid as a solution because too often it is a trap. Aid tied with conditions, Loans written in invisible ink. Partnerships where one party gains and the other remains stagnant. Let us be clear, true help does not come with hidden chains. And any investment that robs us of control over our land, our laws, or our labor is not a blessing, it is modern colonization. We must reject it. Instead, we must look within. The African Union, Ethiopia, Balas, SADC, EAC. These are not just acronyms, they must become vehicles for real economic collaboration. Let us trade more with each other. Let us develop a continental payment system that doesn't rely on external currencies. Let us support African businesses, back African banks, and protect African industries. Yes, the road will be hard. Yes, we will face resistance, but the generations to come must not inherit a continent that still asks for permission to prosper. We must lay the foundation now. This is why we in Burkina Faso are building policies that favor local industries. This is why we are revisiting contracts signed in secrecy and rewriting them in the name of transparency. This is why we are shifting from foreign dependence to regional cooperation and domestic empowerment. And to those who say this is risky, I ask, what has the old path brought us? Generations of assistance, and yet schools without books. Billions in aid, yet no water in our villages. Decades of advice from global financial institutions, and still we remain at the bottom. No, the risk is not in changing. The real danger is in staying the same. We must stop waiting for rescue. Africa is not drowning. Africa is being held down, and we are now pushing back. We will not be shamed for wanting control over our resources. We will not be labeled anti-development for prioritizing our people. We will not be silenced by sanctions or threats. Because the truth is this: economic sovereignty is not about isolation. It is about dignity. It is about self-determination. It is about finally stepping into our rightful place, not as perpetual borrowers, but as proud builders. Africa, we are not poor. We are mismanaged. We are not behind. We are delayed by design. But now the veil is lifting. And as we rise, we must remember, freedom is not given. It is taken, and economic freedom begins with the courage to say no more. No more exploitation masked as investment. No more aid that comes with a chokehold. No more being told how to run our economies by those who once ran our lands. We are ready. Our people are ready. And the world must prepare to see an Africa that no longer begs, but builds. Not tomorrow, today. Because the destiny of Africa lies not in the hands of outsiders, but in our hands. Let us take it, and let us build something worthy of our ancestors and our children. To my African brothers and sisters across cities and villages, deserts and rivers, from Dakar to Dar es Salaam, from the mountains of Ethiopia to the coasts of Namibia, I greet you with unwavering love and resolute pride. In all that I have spoken so far about sovereignty, justice, resource control, and dignity, there lies a greater truth that binds it all together. Africa's strength lies in its unity, not in borrowed voices, not in borrowed models, not in borrowed strength, but in the rich tapestry of our cultures, the brilliance of our minds, and the harmony of a people once divided by borders, drawn in foreign boardrooms. Now is the time for a continental awakening. And so I say this not just to leaders of nations, but to the hearts of every African. We must speak with one voice, for when Africa speaks together, the world must listen. We are not a charity case. We are not a market to be harvested. We are not a theater for proxy wars. We are a continent of destiny. We are the birthplace of civilization, not its burden. So today I call for the unshakable unity of Africa on the global stage, politically, economically, culturally. Let us stop negotiating from a place of weakness. Let us stop showing up divided at international summits, only to leave with nothing but applause and empty resolutions. Let us stop fighting each other while foreign entities reap the rewards of our division. Let us stop allowing foreign narratives to define who our heroes are, what our priorities should be, and how we should govern. If the world wants to engage Africa, let it engage the whole of Africa. No more bilateral fragmentation, no more manipulative diplomacy. It is time for a united African front. A front that demands fair representation at the United Nations. A front that insists on the permanent presence of Africa in the Security Council, not as observers, but as decision makers. A front that no longer accepts that decisions about Africa are made without Africa. Because if peace is negotiated without us, that peace is false. If development is discussed without us, that growth is stolen. If global rules are written without us, they will always be used against us. So we must organize. We must build continental institutions that work, not ones that sit idle during our people's suffering. We must invest in regional diplomacy and continental think tanks. We must educate our youth in Pan-African truths, not just colonial history. And most of all, we must trust ourselves. For too long, we have doubted the strength of African leadership. We have looked outward for validation, outward for answers, outward for affirmation. But leadership that bows to external praise is not leadership, it is submission. And Africa will submit no more. To the African Union, your time to rise as the true continental voice is now. You must evolve beyond protocol and procedure. You must become the shield that protects our sovereignty and the sword that defends our future. To ECOWAS, SADC, EAC, you must serve the people, not the puppets of foreign interests. To African media, amplify African truth. Let our stories be told by our own mouths. To our elders, we honor your fight for independence. To our youth, we pass the torch of Pan-African rebirth. And to the world, hear this, we will no longer apologize for being African. We will no longer dilute our demands to soothe your discomfort. We are not here to replicate your systems. We are here to build our own systems rooted in fairness, policies born of justice, leadership fueled by the will of the people, not the influence of international donors. Let the world take note. This is a new Africa. This is a bold Africa. This is a sovereign Africa. And we will not go back. Not to dependency, not to exploitation, not to silence. So I end this message not with fear but with fire. A fire that burns in every African child who dreams of more time. A fire that blazes in every village still waiting for justice. A fire that will not be extinguished until every African nation walks with dignity, speaks with power, and sings with freedom. The old era is gone. The new era is now. And it will be shaped not by those who wish to manage us, but by we, the children of Africa. So rise, Africa. The world is watching. Let them witness our awakening. Let them hear our roar. Let them feel our unity. For we are not many nations with many destinies. We are one people, and our destiny is greatness. A revolution where we do not wait for validation from Western outlets. A revolution where an African voice is heard in Dakar as loudly as in Paris, where our culture is exported, not just our minerals, where our identity is not something to be explained or defended, but something to be celebrated. Africa, the cradle of humanity, must now become the narrator of humanity. Because if we do not tell our story, others will tell it for us, and they will not tell it with love. This is my call to every African youth holding a phone, a pen, a microphone. You are the new soldiers of this silent war. Fight back not with bullets, but with truth. Reclaim our dignity not by asking, but by showing. We are more than they ever told us we could be. We are the authors of the next chapter, and in this chapter, Africa speaks for itself. My beloved Africa. We must now speak of a subject that many fear to confront, but I will not shy away from it. I will speak it plainly because truth demands it. Foreign aid. For decades, Africa has received billions, no trillions in aid from former colonial powers, global institutions, and so-called development partners, and yet what do we have to show for it? If foreign aid was the solution, Africa would be the most developed continent on Earth. But instead, year after year, summit after summit, loan after loan, we are still told to be patient, still begging, still bowing, still borrowing. This is not aid. This is a cycle of dependency, and it is time we break the chain. You see, foreign aid has not been a gift, it has been a strategy designed to keep Africa submissive, to create the illusion of help while ensuring control. The money comes with conditions, structural adjustments, political reforms, economic policies that serve them, not us. They tell us how to spend it. They choose the consultants. They fund projects that sound good on paper but collapse when the cameras leave. And when we fail, because the system was never designed for our success, they blame us. But I say today, no more. Africa must stop being treated as a patient on life support hooked up to foreign IV drips. We are not helpless. We are not incapable. We are rich not just in resources, but in people, in spirit, in solutions. And yet we allow others to dictate our future in the name of help. They offer us aid, but in return they take control of our mines, our telecoms, our agriculture. They offer us loans and we mortgage our children's future. They fund our NGOs and then write our laws behind closed doors. Is that aid, or is it a new form of colonialism in a suit and tie? My dear brothers and sisters of Africa, today I turn your attention to a battlefield many do not recognize, but one that has perhaps shaped our fate more than we realize. It is not fought with guns nor with bombs. It is fought with cameras, with headlines, with sound bites and clicks. It is the war of narratives. For decades, the world has been fed a carefully curated image of Africa, one that portrays us as forever broken, forever in need, forever at war with ourselves. Images of starving children, corrupt leaders, endless suffering. They never show our inventors. They never amplify our thinkers. They rarely celebrate our victories. Why? Because the one who controls the story controls the perception. And the one who controls the perception controls the power. I say this without apology. Western media has become a weapon, a subtle, sophisticated weapon used not just to report events, but to shape opinions, influence policy, and undermine sovereignty. When an African nation rises, it is called populism. When an African defends his land, it is called militancy. When we challenge injustice, they call us radicals. And when we expose truth, they accuse us of spreading propaganda. But we must now see through these illusions. The narrative that paints Africa as incapable, as dependent, disorganized, or dangerous is not an accident. It is by design. It is a narrative that justifies interference, that keeps us in a box, that convinces even our own youth that success must look like the West. But today I say to you, we must break this mirror they have placed before us. We must own our story. We must reclaim our voice. And it starts with this truth: Africa is not what they say we are. We are not just rich in minerals. We are rich in culture, wisdom, and resilience. We are not a continent of conflict. We are a cradle of civilization and a beacon of untapped potential. But until we tell our own stories, the world will continue to misunderstand us, or people will continue to doubt themselves. This is why independent African media must rise. This is why our youth must take up cameras not just to document, but to defend. This is why digital platforms must become our battlegrounds, not for war, but for truth. We must amplify the voices of our farmers, our teachers, our entrepreneurs, our historians. We must show the world who we are and who we are becoming. Let me ask you this. Why is it that when Africa negotiates trade, it is described as begging, but when Europe or America does the same, it is called diplomacy? Why do they focus on our instability but ignore their role in creating it? Why are we punished for protecting our sovereignty while others are praised for doing the same? The answer is simple: they have the microphone. But now, in the age of social media, in the age of decentralized information, we too can speak. We too can build channels that reflect our realities. We can train our journalists to report from our lens, not through the eyes of foreign editors. We can create documentaries that tell our history with pride, not shame. We can write books, make films, launch podcasts, and refuse to be silenced, because the next phase of our liberation is mental. It is not just about borders or politics. It is about how we see ourselves and how the world sees us. No more should an African leader be judged by how well he pleases outsiders. No more should progress be defined by how closely we imitate Western models. We must stop seeking validation from institutions that have never believed in our success. Instead, we build, we define, we narrate. Let this be the age of the African storyteller. We must not confuse charity with sovereignty. Let me tell you what real help looks like. Real help is equity, not pity. Real help is partnership, not domination. Real help is when we are given the respect to lead our own development in our own way with our own values. Let me share a truth they rarely admit. Much of the aid we receive is recycled debt interest payments dressed up as generosity. And much of it is spent outside Africa before it even reaches us in donor salaries, foreign contractors, and overpriced consultants who don't understand our people. What we receive is a fraction of what we lose through capital flight, tax evasion, and illicit financial flows. Africa is not being helped. Africa is being looted politely, but the world claps because we appear grateful. I am not ungrateful. I am simply no longer willing to be silent. Because every time we sign another aid agreement without scrutiny, we surrender a piece of our dignity. Every time we accept another loan without strategy, we dig a deeper grave for our independence. We must begin to say thank you, but no. Not because we are arrogant, but because we are awake. It is time we develop a new economy, one based on African capital, African innovation, African trade, and Pan-African solidarity. Let us redirect our resources towards ourselves. Let us trust in the brilliance of our people. Let us grow our own food, make our own medicines, build our own machines. Let us invest in ourselves even if we must start small. We do not need aid that comes at the price of our freedom. What we need is vision, discipline, and unity. Let Burkina Faso rise as a model where we choose sacrifice over slavery, honor over handouts, and self-reliance over subjugation. And let every African nation know you can say no. You can walk away. You can choose a harder path now to avoid a broken future later. We must teach our youth that dependency is not destiny. We must create economies that are built not on charity but on courage. Because only then will Africa be truly free. And I will repeat it for those in the back. Africa does not need saving. Africa needs respect. Africa needs to be left to build its own path without interference, without manipulation, without strings attached. And until we do that, aid will not empower us, it will bury us. We are not poor, we are plundered. We are not weak, we are wounded, but healing. And now we are rising. This is not just a new chapter, this is a new declaration. Africa will no longer be the continent of pity. Africa will be the continent of power. And we will write that future with our own hands.